Hello, I'm Brad Hurlock, your host of the Garage Grit podcast, and thanks for coming again to another Origin and Impact series. And today I'm here with Jeremy Bucy of Alan Cox Premier Auto Care, specializing but not solely focusing on Honda repair. And he's going to tell a little bit about his story down in Georgia. And so why don't we get started? Actually, Jeremy, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. And why don't we just start jumping right in with the story of the shop? How long has Alan Cox been a fixture in your area?
Well, thank you for having me on, Brad. Alan Cox Automotive was founded in 1983 by Alan Cox, who was one of the first Honda dealer-trained mechanics in Georgia starting in the 70s. And he established in 83 as one of the first independent Honda repair facilities in Georgia. And since 83, the shop has steadily grown, and we went from a small location in the 80s to building a facility that's much larger in the mid 90s. And we've added Acura as Honda, added that brand, and we've expanded to Toyota, Lexus, and eventually we expand to all Asian makes and models.
Interesting. And so I'm curious to know a couple things. How many other Honda repair shops or Honda focused repair shops are there in your market?
Through the 90s, we had some pretty stiff competition. We had about 5 other Honda and Toyota focused repair shops within a 10-mile radius. Marietta, Georgia has one of the highest concentrations of independent automotive repair shops in the country. But through the 2000s, some of those have fallen away. Some of the owners who didn't want to expand and grow, they ended up retiring. So now there are very few, single make focused shops. And to be honest, we are no longer a single make focused shop.
And why is that?
I noticed a trend somewhere around 2002 to 2005 where the OEM had changed a lot of their product from what they were producing in the 90s, and it didn't sit well with a lot of consumers, so their sales dropped. So as a single make independent repair, subsequently our customer base dropped. So we had to make some changes. We had to bring in new talent, and we had to expand to other makes and models to keep going.
And you continued to expand. So it wasn't just Honda's deficit. It was, you're doing all Asian. Was there another step in there that I missed as far as why you chose to go all Asian?
Just a natural progression of, being able to service these vehicles. Right. But I also noticed that somewhere 2008, 2010, the consumer base seemed to be less interested in, going to a specialty, and through, I guess, industry marketing, the consumer felt that, well, it's a car, so anybody can take care of a car.
Okay. And you feel differently?
Yes, I do feel different. I mean, it's one thing if you have a big enough shop where you have multiple technicians that are specialists in different areas, then you can accurately, offer service in multiple different brands. But, you ever heard the phrase,
master of, jack of all, master of none?
Master, yeah. Jack of all trades, master of none. Thank
no
you.
worries.
The brain stopped working for a second. It's only one cup of coffee this morning.
I actually recently made the mistake of trying to wean off caffeine in general. And I've had less than the equivalent of 1 cup of coffee in the last 2 weeks. So I'm just tired. So all the time.
Surprised
right
you're functioning.
Yeah, that's a bonus. All right. So, to that point, is that why you don't also spread out to European?
European is a vastly different animal. In my experience, you almost have to do your entire career working on European because it's a different thought process. If it's a different tool set, it's a different diagnostic set. So you'll still see a lot of European focused shops. And I really don't see, that being folded into our shop anytime soon. I think we have found our sweet spot, and I'm okay with referring my European customers over to a friend of mine who owns a company called Synchro Car Care, and they do a really good job with, doing the German and BMW, or doing a BMW, Mercedes,
Okay.
Audi.
How do you go to market? How do you go to and convince? You made a comment that a lot of people are believing that it's a car, so anybody can fix it who fixes cars. So how do you answer that? How do you respond to that? How do you teach your customers that there's a level of mastery here that they're going to benefit?
Well, we do what we can to educate every single customer that comes in the door, to a point. You don't want to be overbearing with them. But I think a lot of people learn that by being burned. I've had one come in that they have taken their car to a national chain that works on everything, and they repeatedly cannot get the car, fixed correctly. So through those trials and tribulations, they are learning that they must go to a specialist.
Right. Okay. Got it. All right. I wonder if there's an opportunity from a marketing standpoint to try to find Asian car owners and actually help them understand it before you get burnt. Start coming here. Have you tried that? Have you had any luck with that?
I've tried it on and off throughout the years. The hard part for me is finding the correct messaging that doesn't turn people off. Because no one likes to be preached to. And at the end of the day, we're scolding people, that, hey, you need to kind of, trust the specialist and not the person that's most convenient, And the biggest battle over the past several years is getting people to understand, don't trust the oil idiot light on the dash. Do your oil changes every 3,000 to 5,000 miles, regardless of what the manufacturer says.
That on our podcast when you were part of the panel back in, was that February? I think it was February or March of 2025. So if you're curious to hear how Jeremy tackles that issue with his customers, that's in that panel discussion. And you can find that on the Garage Grid podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube, and the like. So back to our conversation. So, all right. So the history of the shop, what are the stages? When did you take over the shop?
Well, I was first hired on in 2003. At the time, I was still in school. I was attending Kennesaw State University for marketing and professional sales. I was working for a lawn care company. And, on the side, I was in the import, performance scene, building cars here and there, but, nothing too drastic. And I started hanging out at the shop, and they ended up having this little 1988 CRX, blown engine. It needed a bunch of work. I bought it for $400 and rebuilt the engine and put a computer out of a 95 Civic, rewired, repinned everything, and it cranked and ran. And they offered me a job about 4 or 5 days later. And I've come in and I go, okay, well, I'm going to start working on cars. And they go, no, you're sweeping the floor and you're cleaning the bathroom. And so, I'm doing that for a couple months and, I'm getting irritated and whatnot. And I go up and I go, so when am I going to be doing what I get paid to do? And they go, you are doing what you get paid to do, cleaning the bathrooms and sweeping the floors. So eventually, they started trusting me a little bit more. I was working with one of the master techs here and building my knowledge and just growing in the field.
They hired you. Were you officially the janitor, or were you did they label you as a C-level tech or an apprentice of some type?
I think my label was Gopher Whipping Boy.
I'm sorry, Gopher what?
So,
okay.
Gopher Whipping Boy. Go do what you're told to do.
Yeah. All right. And so, so it was a lot of cleaning, but also fetch me this, fetch me that, and or coffee, or whatnot, right? So, okay, and that was just for 2 months, maybe 3
Run,
months,
go
and then
get
you
parts.
finally,
Mhm. 2-3 months.
and at what point did you get any kind of certification? How long before they allowed you to really get knee deep into the training? I'm sorry, I maybe I got ahead of myself on the story, but talk to me about your training story.
The basic structure of training a new tech in the shop is the same today as it was back then. We start off with, a fully detailed inspection process with, a test drive before and a test drive after and all that. And, working with the master tech, walking through this very, very basic process, you're not only just learning how the shop wants it done, but you're also learning how to think in an order of inspecting a vehicle. And that's the very base that we start with every technician, even to this day. Because I need them to understand that when you're looking at it, inspecting a car, you're not shotgunning the thing. There is a thought process and an order to do inspections. And that's where I start. And, as far as certifications, I would say probably within a year or so after that, I started sitting for ASE certifications, even though I got in this massive argument that it was not, applicable to what we're doing. Because most of you ever taken the ASE certification test? It is very basic, and it's almost written for 1950s and 1960s vehicles. Hopefully they have updated them since then. But when I was starting out, they were very, very outdated. And I'm like, this stuff doesn't even apply to a Japanese vehicle. But did it anyway.
Interesting. Okay. And do you make your techs go through that process now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, well, you talked about training them on repairing the vehicle and knowing the vehicle. Where did your training start on dealing with customers? I mean, you had it a little bit with your college background, right? You said it was marketing and sales, professional selling was the discipline that you were in college for.
So, and the university I went to has a very good professional sales department. They do a lot of, one-on-one sales techniques and training, even to the point that they have offices set up with cameras and doing all these role play scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I'm sorry, name that university again.
Kennesaw State University.
Okay. All right.
Which is rapidly becoming one of the largest universities here in Georgia.
Okay.
And you can see their flag behind my head on the wall.
I thought that, yeah, I was putting that together. Okay. All right. Partially. It's behind the,
Brad, let's not talk about my office. It's about as organized as my brain is. So
fair enough. And a lot of people can relate to that.
What do they say? A messy office is a sign of a genius mind.
I think I have heard those types of things. I don't know. I try hard to keep mine organized, but I have to. It's a losing and fighting ongoing battle, right? So, all right. So back to you and back to the shop. So that was where you started to learn about dealing with people. How do you currently train your people on how to deal with people? Because we're not just in this to fix cars. We have to work with the people for the cars with whom we're fixing, right? So, like, what is your training process do you have dedicated service advisors, or are the technicians talking directly to the customers, or a little bit of both?
Well, when it comes to service advisors, I'm specifically looking for people who have some sort of history in customer facing, whether it be in automotive or in sales or whatever, because, that's very much of a personality thing.
Yeah.
We all have worked with technicians that are very good technicians, but personality wise, you would never want them to speak to the customer. And I have a couple like that now.
Okay. All right.
And those people, I run the interface for them. I don't want to put them in a position where they feel uncomfortable because it's just not a talent that they have.
Okay. I'm thinking about the DVIs. Are there any videos that you're taking as part of your DVI process to? And I'm sorry. I'm back. Let me back up. Are you doing digital vehicle inspections?
Yes.
And
We generally don't do a lot of videos unless it's absolutely necessary. We tend to stick with, still pictures.
then you don't have to worry
We're
about the
still,
actual person talking who doesn't have the personality for it. Okay, got it.
yeah. And we're still kind of in that old school, new school transition.
How so?
Well, like we spoke about, before, we still do a lot of stuff on paper. We still keep, paper records for 7 years as a backup resource. We do digital inspections on tablets because it makes it easier to email customers, but you really like to fall back on the one-on-one communication side, because while email and text, may be efficient, but you lose a lot. You can't hear people's voice. You can't read their body language. You can't tailor what you're trying to do to help them either understand something or to help them make a decision. I really do struggle with that, because as time goes by, the younger generations are getting older and they still have a lot of, younger ways of wanting to do everything by email and text. And it's just not efficient. It's the single worst form of communication we have.
I agree. I prefer the phone by and large. There's it's ironic because I'm married to a lawyer, and so she prefers everything in writing. And so, and I prefer just to have a conversation with people, right? So,
yeah, never put anything in writing, man.
Right. Right, exactly. Yeah, we could joke about that, but but I can relate to what you're saying. And, but there is a segment of that, especially that younger group, that, there's almost a phobia of using the phone. It's almost to that point where it's not just a convenience thing. It's some of them are actually afraid and uncomfortable with saying hello and picking up the phone. And so that to me is also fascinating to see that trend.
Well, and does that problem fall on the business to solve, or is that just an example of the customer you don't want?
I think that the numbers would say that it's a issue that you need to be ready to. You need to meet I would think that you would need to meet the customer where they need to be met. And if they're willing to have the correct maintenance done on their proactive maintenance done on their vehicle, then you want that customer. And now you've got to meet them how they want to be met. That would be my response to your question, because otherwise you're going to be continuing to draw your market share is going to be continuing to be smaller. You made the smart choice at evolving your operations when Honda made some changes, right? And then you've evolved it again since then, so that you aren't reliant on a single make. And I think that was smart. And I think this is a similar approach. You need to adjust to.
And we do texting and we do emailing and all that. I'm more being stubborn here in my statements, but
I get it. Yeah, and I can appreciate.
I just like to read people. It makes it easier, and it's very hard to do that. Don't cross path.
It is more fun, and it's also partly because you're the kind of person that went to school for marketing and professional selling. Like, that attracted you, so you kind of found yourself, there. So that doesn't surprise me at all. So it matches, it tracks. All right, so talk to me.
You made a comment earlier on, one of the things that has helped, being more personable in that. And, you look at, look at yourself when you were in your early 20s, you still haven't found who you are. You're not comfortable in your skin yet. And one of the things that happened with me about 2006 to 2008 is, a gentleman approached me about building him a race car. So built him a car, and he brought me the track. So I was forced in a situation where I had to interact with all different types of people and be able to convey information in a very quick and precise manner. So that really helped me figure out, who I was, and to be more confident in, if I go and take my racing experience, where, if you have a problem at the track, you have to identify it quickly. You have to be concise about it and find a solution. I can apply that to the business side and be more confident in when I am, speaking to a customer, that I am coming from a place of authority.
I think it's important to be able to come from that place, right?
I mean, when you're older, you've already learned those things, but I was developing those things in my 20s.
Right. And one of the things that I hear a lot of youth say is they start to end statements with a question, and that erodes your authority on the topic as well.
Sure.
Like, if it's a statement, make the statement. If you want to ask a question, that's fine. But you don't actually raise your voice when you're talking at the end to see if they understand, right? That's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, maybe. But I notice, and maybe that's why I notice it as often as I do. I wonder if it happens because of that low confidence that they actually have. Just thinking about that.
I see that a lot in salespeople that do not have a lot of history in automotive. Okay. They're not confident in their knowledge. They're trying to convey something that someone else wrote out.
Okay. I would imagine you get salespeople at your shop all the time.
Sure.
Right. Do you turn them away or do you talk to them?
It depends. I got to read their personality.
Okay.
I get some that come in that, I'll listen to, and some that come in that don't get 10 feet in the door.
Okay.
And don't call me selling stuff.
Okay.
You won't get very far on the phone.
All right. Interesting. And so I think about my own interactions with salespeople, and I find that if they are doing things correctly, presenting themselves well and saying things correctly, then I am more inclined to continue to listen. But it's also because of my sales background and training that I can apply it's not just my own personal preference. I will reward them, even if I'm not interested just yet on the topic that they're trying to relay, because they're doing the right things. Does that make sense? Do you do that at all? Is that part of what you're doing when you're reading them?
Sometimes I toy with them.
Okay.
Just for fun.
Okay. All right. I go out of my way, though. I've checked myself several times to make sure that I don't give them advice on the correct way to do it if they're doing it wrong, because they're not interested in hearing from me on that. If they were interested in hearing that topic, they would have hired a coach who would have corrected it already. And so, speaking of coaches, do you have a coach?
I do not. I do have a group of other shop owners. We get together and we discuss things, or I'll call them up and go, "Hey, have you experienced this? How is this marketing thing you're doing? Are you seeing a return on that?" We just kind of bounce business ideas off each other. And I also look at other business owner friends of mine in other industries.
Okay.
And kind of talk with them about what they're seeing, what they're doing, and they're seeing something that works. I try to examine and see if it'll work for mine.
All right. So I'm curious. I've got several questions around that. First, I'll do them in reverse order, I guess. Those other industries, do you care to mention a couple of the examples of other industries that you're paying attention?
Some of them were construction. Some of them were like, really good friend of mine had a company that did, mold remediation, water damage, stuff like that, restoration services. A friend of mine that owned chiropractic firm, another good friends of mine that owned sign companies.
But not exclusively blue collar. You threw in medical in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And as far as this group of business owners who are in the industry, is that a structured thing, or has that just been a casual, evolved friendship from conferences that you've gone to and you just made touch and you kept in touch?
It's mostly casual.
It's casual. Yeah. So there's not a program that you're attached to with that.
No.
Okay. And where did you meet these guys? How did you come across them?
Just through the years. I have a good friend of mine. I mentioned his shop before, Synchro Car Care. He started out, building BMW differentials. He would do custom differentials for it. And, he and I were talking, and he was like, "This stuff ebbs and flows. I make like 20,000 one month and 2,000 the next." I'm like, like, David, you have all of the stuff to set up to work on cars. Let's start talking about how to transition your performance business to a service industry. And he and I have been bouncing stuff back and forth for over a decade, and now he has grown to doing 200 hours a week here at his shop. So he's been a good friend. I helped another friend of mine that was in the racing industry, kind of, entry level stuff, and he was tired of riding that way. And I helped him, look at what his guys were good at doing and start opening up, his shop for service work. And now he specializes in rebuilding Porsche dual clutch transmissions.
Nice. And now that these guys are more cemented into new industries, they're also throwing ideas back to you from what they're seeing, and it's a
Sure.
back and forth. Do you have you had any mentors along the way?
Not in automotive.
Okay.
I have some lifelong friends that in different industries, that have mentored me on how to lead, how to, when I get upset at something, how to process that without, snapping back at people,
Yeah, that's not easy to do, especially when you're lacking caffeine and you're half asleep. So anyway, so all right, so so I find that really, really interesting. Have you explored coaching in the past?
I have, and with some people it works very well. I guess, internally, I'm like, why am I going to pay somebody $10,000-$20,000 a year to tell me to change one or two things, that I can discover on my own? I mean, that's probably a lot of me being stubborn.
Okay.
Right.
All right. That's
obviously a lot of their systems work because they have helped a lot of shops.
Right. And in fact, we had a panel back in May of 2025 where we were talking about yes or no, does your shop need a coach? And so and not everybody on the panel is currently active with a coach, but all of them said yes. It helps you get out of your own way in certain ways, in certain areas that will advance your shop, farther along. Now, you have the advantage of having multiple peer groups and outside industry mentors that have helped you in ways that maybe those coaches would have also, it would have been overlap potentially. I don't know. And so I really do appreciate and respect that you've actually set up those other places as opposed to just doing it all. It's not the Jeremy show, right? It's you're paying attention to other things and other sources. And I think that's one of the things that's often missed in general. And often the need for a coach to begin with. So I find that interesting.
One of the biggest lessons is I've had to learn over the past 5 or 6 years is ego. Ego is the one thing that will destroy any business or business owner. And in our case, it's my ego of saying, yes, I can build anything. I can create anything. Whatever you want, I can do it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I should. I've got project cars that don't exist anywhere in the world. They have things in them that no one has ever done. But the burden of it is insane. Absolutely insane.
I think we've talked about that before, is that you have a separate, I don't know if you want to call it a division of the shop. That's
probably the best way to describe it.
And not really a focus area, but it's kind of a smaller division where it's project oriented work for. Why don't you talk about that a little bit? What do you got going there?
So the smaller division focuses on, vintage cars, repair, but also we do modern, resto mod, builds to these things. So for instance, I have a 64 Thunderbird here, doing fuel injection, which is relatively straightforward. but we're also doing modern air conditioning and hidden Bluetooth radio, embedding a tablet in the center of the dash. So we're customizing the interior to accept this tablet. And that tablet Bluetooth controls the air conditioning through a touchscreen. It gives full engine telemetry readout from the fuel injection system and allows you to Bluetooth control a hidden radio. So you don't have all these knobs and everything on the dash. So it looks more like a modern touchscreen car in the 64 Thunderbird.
And are you going to be, now I'm just curious, are you going to be able to swap out that tablet? I mean, tablets.
Sure.
A tablet from 5 years ago is almost obsolete. So the interface,
the processing power needed to do this isn't that drastic. I mean, it needs to be a cellular enabled tablet, obviously. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it would have a service life. The problem that I ran into is it has to be a specific size. Mm-hmm. So I haven't 100% determined what size tablet I'm putting in. I have an idea of what I want to do, but we're still building that car. So,
and you are. It really. When you were describing it, I was thinking, oh, you're making a car. That's really what.
Well, no, that's the easiest one we're doing.
Okay,
that's the easiest car we're doing.
That's interesting. Okay.
I have a '68 AMX. It's a 2020 Dodge Hellcat motor with the 8-speed automatic. We did a custom independent rear suspension on it, worked with heights on that because the customer had previously a Ford 9-inch rear end in it. But I don't know if you're familiar with an AMX, but it's a relatively short car. So, sitting in the driver's seat, you're not but 1.5 feet or so from the rear end. So when you go over a bump and you have this massive heavy rear end, it jars the whole car. So we ended up designing a full independent rear suspension, with inboard brakes on the rear differential, and which basically reduces the amount of weight on each corner. And then a friend of mine works over at Motion Control, and we did custom coilovers for it, based on the weight of the vehicle. But it's, got past that, it has a company called Motec. They make this, nice big digital display that can display anything. And so we put that in. We have proximity keys. So you walk up the car unlocks itself, the lights come on. The head unit, the radio head unit in the dash, has inputs to tie into the turn signals. So we have camera pods below the mirrors. So when you turn the turn signal on the right camera pod comes on and displays on the center screen.
Interesting. Okay.
And vice versa. So it has a lot of really cool, interesting things in
it. It does sound fun. But I'm wondering what it does to your shop.
That's been 3 years. That's been 3 years and $250,000. And it's that's my Edo. I will never ever build another one again.
Okay. Okay. What does it do from the workflow of the shop? Do you have dedicated technicians on this division, or are you pulling from your bench to go work on this?
No, for the majority of that car span, it's been me building it. I recently been very lucky to find a young man in his early 30s. He's kind of an old soul, and he's got an old style work ethic and extremely intelligent person. And I brought him on back in January.
Okay.
And he's been working with me, and we've been knocking stuff out left and right.
Okay. Got it. So these are definitely considered, well, now that you've got an employee dedicated to it, it's a little bit more of a division than it was a side hustle or a side project.
Yes.
That's great. All right. So the core off how many technicians do you have? I don't know that we asked that.
Well, we have 3 full-time technicians that handle the normal, production work.
Okay.
I have one that handles, the vintage car work, but he's an alternate for the production work.
Right.
I treat myself as an alternate for it. So it allows us to not have to hire additional technicians and, have them starve when the work level is not here. So it allows us to throttle, as work level increases and decreases.
And how many service advisors do you have?
2.
Okay. And you're the shop foreman or manager? Well, you have a
Shop foreman, manager, janitor, fixer,
you
everything.
retain the janitor title. That's good for you. That's good. I like that. So,
Half of what I do is clean up messes.
so, all right. And do the service advisors like to work with certain technicians, or they all love each other?
Well, I'm sure that, there are some technicians that are more quickly than others, but I don't divide the technicians among the service advisors.
Okay. All right. It's
but that's where, I pay my service advisors a salary as opposed to the percentage of total sales.
okay. All right. And is it a team type relationship, or is
Yes.
it the person comes in and so the person who made the appointment is the one that shepherds that all the way through the process?
It's a mix of both. There's certain, vehicles and whatnot that are team based, but then there are other ones that are a little more specialty that would keep with whichever service advisor started.
What defines specialty? The type of car or the type of customer?
So all of my vintage car customers go through one specific service advisor.
There you
so
go.
he handles all of those start to finish.
Okay. But all the other cars on the production side, it's whoever's
Sure.
all hands on deck. It's a team type approach.
Yes.
And
I even do that to a certain extent, especially when somebody's on vacation.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not my favorite job. I'm not a great service advisor.
Well, what is come on, with your background, I would think that you'd be fine at it. But what is next for your shop? What is next? Are you going to hire somebody to be your replacement so that you aren't the bench? They are the bench?
And that's really the big question long term. So, if you can find somebody that can replace you, then yes, you can, maintain ownership of the shop and then step away. But if you can't find that person, or if you can't find a person that you trust to do that, then you're looking at a situation of, okay, do I sell the business and keep the land? Do I sell the business and the land? I mean, all of these things are possibilities for the future.
Yeah.
Because I'm 46, personally, I have a goal of by the time I'm 55, I want to move on and do something else.
Oh, okay. All right. Do something. Do you have something in mind?
Well, if I end up in Florida, I might start a little outboard boat service industry, service business.
Okay. So not retirement per se, just
no.
just something next. Okay. So, and interestingly enough, the panel discussion for August of 2025 is going to be about succession planning and how to kind of shepherd your business, from where you're at today to that next step or that next stage. So that'll be an interesting conversation. Worth checking out for sure. I'm just trying to think about how do you go about making sure that you refer to it as the production side of things. Are there mechanisms or things in place to make sure that the customers don't feel that it feels more than just transactional for them? That's what I'm asking. What kind of relationships do you have with your customers?
Well, one of our core tenets is personal service is our commitment. We've used that as a tagline on and off for several years. And that kind of harkens back to the, point of this conversation we were talking about, speaking to people on the phone or speaking to people in person. That ability to, provide that personal service and tailor that personal service to each customer, is very important to us.
Can you give me an example?
Not really off the top of my head. We really do try to treat every person, as their own individual case. I mean, I'm sure we've had more transactional type, interactions with customers. And the hard part is when you get a new customer in that you don't have an established relationship with, trying to, make them feel comfortable and make them trust you, for their first visits. And, we're not perfect. We've had successes, we've had failures, but we try to learn from them and move on.
I found the panel discussion that you were part of back in February or March, whichever month that was of 2025, about the service intervals. I believe Mitch was on the show with us. And I found his approach to getting that personal relationship. He ends up being the driver for when they need a ride back to their home. If they dropped off their car,
Sure.
and talk about the time spent in that car, they get to know each other, right? That was pretty interesting. Do you have a process in place, or is it just here's one of our tenants, and keep this front of mind and always be looking for an opportunity to practice what we preach?
I have two minds about that. One, I think we could probably be better at providing a structured process for that, but also at the same time, the people that I have that interact with customers, I trust them to rely on their own personality. That's why they're in these roles, to help establish a relationship with a new customer. But I've been through situations where you get a new customer and they're already walking in the door. They already think that they're going to be taken advantage of, and the personalities don't mesh well. So that's where a process for handling that would be beneficial.
Okay. Yes, I can see that. As far as I mentioned the handling the rides or doing a ride share type thing, are those some of the ways that you actually provide a higher level of concierge service?
Yes, we do. We do provide rides to customers.
Is that you? Is that one of your technicians? Is that one of the service advisors? Is that using Uber?
It's spread across three of us. Myself, my business partner Marshall, and one of my service advisors Perry. We kind of share that role.
Okay. All right. And have you explored actually using Uber?
We have. Yeah, we've done that from time to time, or customers will come in and they'll already have an Uber coming to pick them up.
Okay. All right.
I looked at that kind of probably about 8 years ago when we were having this debate on should we get cars for loaners, or should we cover people's Uber rides,
Yeah. And interestingly enough, that was also a panel discussion in December of 2024. I feel like I keep mentioning past panels because it keeps coming up in our conversation here. So, and the one panelist, he had taken it to the point where it was a full separate business now of rental, and I've had other shops talk about how they just make sure that their shuttle ride is decked out so that it's advertising while they're doing the shuttling, and those types of things.
We've done that too until that van got totaled.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it doesn't take depending on how new the van was, it doesn't take much to total, especially if you got a front end damage with all the ADAS and whatnot. Do you come across ADAS issues with your cars?
Occasionally, most of the time, what do we come across is when they need windshield replacements. But we don't do a lot of collisions, so it's not something that really comes up a lot with us.
Right.
We don't have the space for a full ADAS calibration area, so we end up farming it out.
Okay. Do you farm it out to dealers, or do you farm it out to?
Depending on the car.
Okay. All right.
I would say 90-10 deal it.
Okay. All right. So I'm just thinking about the making them feel special. It's mostly done by just having a conversation with them and making them feel the value that they have, making them recognize the value that they have.
Well, that, and also, performing the work, to a high level, and, doing things in a timely manner, basically doing all the things they expect anyway. And I've had this debate for a while, and you may have had a podcast on this, but when all the customers, when they come in the door and they already expect the work to be done to an extremely high level, to the car to be clean, to, things to be done in an efficient manner, where is your opportunity past that to differentiate your business from every other shop that is striving to do the same thing? And I think that's one of the areas where I think our industry tries to start doing the coupons and the discounts and to start this race to the bottom. Because I think a lot of business owners don't know how to differentiate their business from their competitor's business that is doing the exact same thing to the exact same quality level that you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen different shops take different approaches. Some shops hate the idea they prefer to not have too many waiters, right? People waiting for service. And I've had others who have gone to the point where their waiting room is so posh. And we're talking leather recliners, large screen TV with video game consoles with, because let's face it, if you are a video gamer, you lose track of time. So if you're trying to make sure that they're not paying attention to how long it's taking to get the job done, put an addictive dopamine rush game in front of them, and they'll be lost for hours, right? So others have set up, work areas, and I've seen some shops, they just do the whole, we've got this little coffee station here, and we have some powdered donuts. And I don't feel like that actually goes far enough. If you're going to go that route, and be impressive with it. Now, you have some luxury cars in your that come through your doors, right? I mean, you're servicing luxury cars as well as more common cars. Is that a fair way to say it? And so your customer base it varies as far as what they expect and the level of treatment that they expect. Do you have a waiting room? Are you set up like that? What do you have?
I do have a small waiting room. We're actually looking at redoing it, but I also have a computer workroom for people that is separate. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Desk and desk and a chair for them to put up their laptop.
Basically. Yep. And then, charge ports and things like that available to them. We control the lighting level in there so they can see the screen better, just little things like that.
Right. Nice. Okay. How many workstations do you have in there?
It's enough for 3 people.
Okay.
We also try to not have an excessive amount of waiters.
Yep. Do you have it set up where you have like only so many per day or so many per morning, or what's your?
We schedule them based on hour. So, we try not to have more than 3 an hour.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
And then we'll throttle that based on what kind of big work is in the shop, how many technicians will be available to do things.
Right.
It's not a perfect system, but okay. I don't know who has a perfect system, to be honest with you.
Yeah. We were talking about, avoiding the race to the bottom and how to differentiate yourself from other shops. Do you have any other fun ideas? Not that you want to give away all the things that you have coming, but in the near future, do you have some new ideas that you plan on implementing?
To be honest, what I think is we're back into is old school marketing. You still have your website and your Facebook and all that. You still have your digital presence, but I think a lot of people are going back to, mailers, doing things, in the community, just keeping your name out there, because we transitioned to a point where everybody was like, well, I got to have YouTube videos. I got to have, this big Instagram thing. And I think that's probably good if your target audience is in their 30s. But if you're a shop like mine that your target is in their 40s and 50s and families and things like that, I think we are better suited towards the more traditional market.
And you don't think that those work together? I think they work hand in hand.
They can, but, I'm only one man.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. I'm a big proponent of doing community-based activities. And to keep the running joke of, we did have a podcast about that in January of 2025, about being connected to your community and about, different ways that you can actually, keep your name out there. And I think it goes beyond just putting your name on a Little League shirt. I think actually being part of, plugged into, and then finding ways to actually promote those community activities. But I think in today's day and age, they see your name and they 3 weeks later, they're like, oh, I have a car issue. And now they're Googling you. And so that's where the old school meets the new school, right? You're connecting with them initially by old school, but when it comes time for that decision making, they need to find your Google Business Profile really, really easily, and they're going to completely mess up your name. They're going to completely not quite remember how it was or what was in it. Though some of them will even spell Premiere wrong, like. But I mean, they will, right? That's what's going to happen. And so making sure that you have all those connections to get them across the finish line, I think is very, very important. But I like your approach. I do think you're onto something as far as, kind of leveraging some of those old school technology ways, right? It's not all or one. All right. So mailers, are you sending out mailers specific to Lexus owners? And then you're doing another mailer specific for Honda owners? What are you doing?
So we've done generic mailers, your standard, plastic card thing. But what I like to do is do specific times a year. So like for my existing customer base,
Sure.
I will mail out, like IRS checks or, Christmas cards, things like that. They're specifically targeted to bring people in during the traditional lulls in the season.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, with your existing customers, are you also sending text message reminders about service intervals?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And when it comes to new customers, how are you targeting new customers?
Still a lot of internet-based.
Okay.
Some mailers, trying to target specific zip codes with mailers, because it's a fortune if you try to blast everybody. But
well, and one thing I know to be the case when it comes to marketing is if you try to blast everybody, you're rarely going to get anybody because you've created too broad of a message for it to resonate with anybody. And so you're almost better off doing, smaller and more specific campaigns, just trying to target them specifically. So,
and we're kind of trying to figure out where the vintage car size is going to go to, because it's continued to build to the point that it almost needs its new facility, and then looking at how to market that, effectively market that.
Very different beast.
It's a very different beast. In some ways, it's easier because who doesn't like a cool car, but it's a different target market.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, there's going to be an old school element to that marketing. You are going to rely on them talking to each other, because they are involved in their own communities and talking to each other. But some of those communities are also online. And so finding those are going to be part of your challenge. And back to the videos. You need to have some really cool videos showing the work and showing the end result to them.
We're in that debate too of, should we be a shop, or at least as far as the vintage car is concerned, that offers a level of anonymity to our customers? For instance, through referrals, I had the opportunity to work on one of 4 existing Packard limousines. The car was built as bombs were falling on Pearl Harbor. Its production date was December 8, 1941. Beautiful car. There's only 4 known in the world. And I talked to him, and, he said, I would prefer that no pictures be taken, no posts be done. My name's not mentioned. Well, because it is such a rare car.
I think the answer is you advertise that that to be anonymous is an option, and it's not an issue. And this customer has actually has given us permission to brag about our work. Right, you put that out front, and then it's a case by case scenario. So don't say anything more about the limousine, right? Talk about some of the other projects that you're working on that you are allowed to talk about. I think that would be the answer. But I think you are going to want to have at some point some videos showing some of that work. That way it doesn't feel like vaporware.
And we've shot some.
Are you familiar with the term vaporware?
I am not.
And so it's a little bit
Sounds
of
like one of them internet terms.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a geek type thing, and I don't even know how common it is, but the idea is it's software that doesn't yet exist. It's vapor, and so it's they'll talk about it as if it exists, but it actually doesn't yet, and so it's coined vaporware. So I would want you to have proof. That's kind of my point. Is like, I don't want you to say, hey, we could do all these great things and not have evidence of it, right? So, yeah. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so we talked about what's next for you. We talked about both divisions of the shop. We talked about your relationship with your customers and how it's an ongoing thing to try to find ways to be concierge to your customers and make them feel valuable and know that they have value with you. And we talked a little bit about your service advisors and their team. We talked about how you started out as a janitor and now you actually own the shop. That's awesome. Did we talk about what year you purchased it? I think we did, but why don't we real quick jog my memory on that?
I started the conversation in 2013 to start my own shop. And the owner at the time basically said, why don't you just buy this one? So we started going down that path, learning more about it, started running it midway through 2014, and then everything was finalized in April of 2015. So I have officially been running the shop for 10 years, or owning the shop for 10 years.
Okay. All right. So, but it was a 2-year process to go through from conversation to doing it. And do you still stay in touch with Mr. Cox?
Well, I bought it from his ex-wife.
Okay.
Because she ended up buying him out in the early 90s. And so, it's a long story I won't go into, but, she ran it for, probably 20 plus years. And then, she wanted to retire.
And so you never actually worked for him. You only worked for her. Okay.
I mean, I've met him several times.
Okay.
But no, I never directly worked for him.
Okay. That's very, very interesting. Okay. Fun.
Shop's been around a long time, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully it'll be around for much longer, right? For years and years and years to come, beyond even past just 7 years from now. So, all right. Well, good. Well, I really appreciate the time that you've taken to chat with us and share your story and talk about the shop and what you've got going there. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Brad.
This is, again, an episode of the Garage Grit Podcast. And if you want to continue the conversation from various panels, we have a community group on Facebook called the Garage Grit Podcast Community. And so you can find us there if you're a technician or actually preferably a shop owner or a shop manager. We'll just request to join. We'll have you jump in. It's a small group just yet, but we're trying to grow it so that we continue these types of conversations. And the goal is to be that community for each other and another place for you to help each other out and kind of give back to the industry that's given so much to us. So